So I saw this video by KZaggin20, one of my favorite content creators, also one of the admins on my group Sociosexual Dynamics. If you're not a member of that group on Facebook, go ahead and join. Right now, his video was, women do not simply develop an emotional connection after having sex. Now, I think I look at this in a dual way. And I'm going to give my comment, then I'm going to give my response to it. This is a response video, right? So my comment was, many women have a higher capacity for pragmatism than most men when it comes to sex and relationships. I do believe that the separation of sex and emotions is a learned behavior that has importance for self-protection for both men and women. Many women have sexual inexperience and view their bodies as an investment. So if they have sex with a man, they are attached to the outcome of return on investment, which gives them an opportunity to get emotionally attached while seeking a return on that investment, the same way many men are attached to the time, energy, and resources that they invest when it comes to dates. And they're hoping to be reciprocated sexually, right? Many men who lead with emotional intimacy have only had sex with women who decided that they liked them enough, tend to not experience women who are sexually liberated and are attracted enough to not feel they need some sort of emotional investment for sex. But those men get women who are emotionally attracted but not sexually attracted. One thing I've learned since I started dealing with women on a more casual basis is women can be very pragmatic about their desire for dick if they're only sexually attracted to a man. Now, one thing that is a very prevalent mindset and thought process that KZaggin shares within his videos is that sex and emotions are separate, right? Sex and emotions are completely separate. Now, this is something that I believe that a man should go into a situation with the woman with that assumption in mind, right? And I say that with the same way that I believe that a man should go into dealing with a woman with the assumption that this woman is already promiscuous and that this woman is already accustomed and attuned to having casual sex. Now, like I said in my comment, separating sex from emotions for both men and women is a learned behavior. Now, for somebody who desires to be in a relationship one day, you have to learn how to reintegrate those things. And one thing that I will say is this: there is an investment that creates an attachment to that investment that causes a person to become attached to an individual. Now, that may not necessarily be a true connection, right? That transactional investment and the attachment to that transactional investment is not the same as having sexual chemistry and sexual compatibility and a sexual connection that is pure, that's true, based on a pure level of sexual desire between both people, right? But it also isn't a true emotional connection on either side, right? It's not a true emotional connection on either side because people are trading what they want to get what they want in return. Now, this is where a lot of the blue pill mentality comes from. Now, the red pill and the pink pill mentality often comes from, how do you get the highest return on investment from giving the least that you have to give in return, the least of what a person wants from you, and making yourself attractive for, and pretty much manipulating the other person so that they can give you what they want while you give the least up front. Now, I don't agree with either one of these mentalities. I don't believe that a man should say, well, I spent this on you, so you owe me sex. And I don't believe that a man should say, well, if this woman doesn't want to have sex with me when I do the bare minimum, then she doesn't view me as high value. What I believe is that a person should make themselves attractive for the outcome that they desire. That's a different mentality. It separates the transactional mindset out of the way that people go about dating in relationships. And as a man, you should put what it is that you want first, right? Now, the thing is this: there are women who decide that they want to be dominant as well, but you have to be conscious of certain things, right? And what you have to be conscious of is whatever you lead with, right? Whatever you lead with, you can make yourself attractive for the outcome that you desire, but unless you have both a true sexual connection and a true emotional connection, a relationship is not going to be successful and that relationship is not going to work. Oftentimes with premature integration, it's based off of that transactional mindset of sex for love or love for sex. So it's really just emotional closeness in exchange for sex. Now, oftentimes it has a certain level of realness because people don't know how to do things otherwise. But many people, they get to a place where they're afraid of dating, they're afraid of relationships, They're afraid of interacting with the opposite sex because they haven't been in a situation where they experienced a high return on investment. But you have to invest in yourself in a way to where if you decide that you want to be the feminine party, right, or the submissive party, and that's a role that you want to play, you have to learn something called intrinsic desire, intrinsic reward, right, intrinsic motivation, which means that if you're a woman and you desire to be with the man who's masculine and dominant, you have to understand that the first thing that he thinks when he sees you is that he's sexually attracted to you, right? So if a man leads with emotion, then there's a chance that this man does not have a dominant streak within him, right? Or he is going to wait for you to initiate the sexual aspect of the relationship, or he may be a man who is manipulating you, or he may be a man who doesn't prioritize having sexual compatibility on a certain level at all. So what you have to understand is that when you meet a man, you need to have enough security to not feel like you are being taken advantage of and that your cup is being poured out in a way that is uncomfortable to you if you sleep with this man. So what I tell women is this: if you desire a relationship, you need to deal with the man who you are sexually attracted enough to not feel like you are losing something by dealing with that man. But this is the thing about it right here. This is the thing about it. What many women do is the moment that they hit that pure level of sexual attraction, that's where, because they are willing to have sex for the sake of having sex, they take a no-limit soldier approach to where they say, well, because I had sex with you, or because I was attracted enough to you to do it, that I'm not interested in anything outside of sex because of that. Now, those women tend to get in relationships with men who they either aren't sexually attracted to, or men who are willing to manipulate them through giving them emotion up front, giving them the idea of a relationship up front, just for those things to go left in the long term. So that means that if you are in a position where you are a woman and you desire to be feminine and submissive, you shouldn't deal with a man who you don't have a pure level of sexual attraction to. But after that, you have to know how to campaign for the position that you desire. So that means if you want to be that man's girlfriend, you want to be his eventual wife, you have to know how to identify good character traits. You have to know how to identify good character. You have to know how to follow his lead on certain things, right? You have to know how to be at least a baseline level of cooperative, but know how to pour out, to extend yourself, and then see if he is going to reciprocate you, and see if you can enjoy going through his program and his process for the sake of going through his program and his process, right? Because when you're dealing with the man on a sexual level, what you're really doing is you're building up some smaller muscle groups. You're building up a certain level of chemistry and compatibility. But in that same time that you're dealing with him, once you start to open up somewhat emotionally, or once you start to try to get to know this man better, if he's open to doing that and he shows that he's attracted to you, now you are in a position where you have to learn what it means to be this man's woman. Don't necessarily take the mindset of thinking that when you meet a man, you're going to be a ready-made wife already, because what it takes to be one man's woman is going to be different than the expectations of another man. And when you base the expectations of a man who has no program, and you say that, well, I've made up to these expectations, which may be only being attractive, only having a job, only not being overtly disrespectful, you may think that, well, since this man doesn't see this as me being the woman that he should want to be with automatically, he doesn't care, he don't give a fuck, so he's a fuckboy. Got to go back to my video on why many women will never learn the difference between a masculine dominant man and a feminine dominant man, or a leader versus a fuckboy. Right? You have to campaign for the position that you desire, but you have to see if this man has anything to teach you. If a man has nothing to teach you, he has nothing to offer you, right? And as a man, there's a difference between being emotionally detached, emotionally unavailable, right? Being overly emotional and having emotional discipline, which means that you take your time to vet a woman, which means that you want to deal with the woman in a way to where you establish that sexual compatibility, that sexual chemistry. You see if she can follow your lead. You see if she can follow instructions. And you see if she takes pleasure and takes delight in seeing you be a leader, seeing you be masculine, seeing you be dominant in a way that causes her to be attracted to you, but in a way that is not only inside the bedroom, but starts to extend beyond that, where she starts to like you as a person, where she starts to desire more from you. And when she starts to desire more from you, that's where you set your expectations. You set certain standards. Now, you set boundaries for each level that you're at, but you let her know what you're inclined to go to. You let her know what your standards will be for that. but you don't expect anything from a woman that you can't teach her. So that means if a woman is a hookup, she wants to be fuck buddies, right? Now, it shouldn't be difficult for a woman to understand, okay, cool, if I want to be fuck buddies with him and deal with him on a consistent basis, that means that I have to be able to respect his time, be available when he wants to fuck with me, and if I'm not available, I need to find a time to be available at my nearest possible convenience. And you don't do that by trying to force yourself to do something that isn't natural. You just become cognizant of these things and you say, okay, well, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm attracted to him enough. I desire him. I sexually desire him. So I want to sleep with him again. And I want to sleep with him on a more somewhat consistent basis. Every once in a while, you need to be able to initiate saying that you want to sleep with him and not just only sleep with him when he contacts you. So these are different parts of that process, but along that process, from time to time, you may have conversations, right? You may have conversations, maybe to and fro, maybe between sex acts, right? Maybe just a little bit of pillow talk or whatever it is. And then you build up from there. See, when you go from a hookup to a fuck buddy, consistency is an important part to that. Also, you don't want to burn the situation out. So you don't want to have sex every day with an individual who you just met for 3 weeks straight and then think that you're not going to burn out and you're going to have been too deep into the situation to be able to walk outside of it, right? And then you go from being fuck buddies to being friends with benefits. That's where you realize, okay, cool, if you naturally feel like, you know what, I like this man's personality, I like his character, I like the way he carries himself, I like that I feel safe in his presence, I like his energy, I like that I feel this excitement about him. That's where you start to shift your mindset, right? You shift your mindset to being able to like that man on more of a friendly emotional level, but it's still a process of still respecting those boundaries and respecting his leadership. Seeing if he knows how to lead. You have to vet a man to see if he knows how to lead. Many women get into relationships with men who they do not respect, but they just desire a relationship and the validation of emotional closeness so bad that they'll get into a relationship with a man who they do not respect, they do not desire, and then they'll blame the man afterwards. And yes, it's the man's fault. If that's who I'm talking to, if I talk to the man, I'll say it's his fault for not vetting for that. But if you're in a relationship with a man who you don't respect, that's on you, right? Because you have a variety of men that you can choose from. There's certain things about how he presented himself up front that you liked and you were drawn to that and you took that. And oftentimes how you start is going to be how you finish. So these are just some important things to understand, right? So when you go from the steps of being friends with benefits, and you do that for a period of time. Now, if you see that this man has a capacity to be consistent, if he's teaching you things, once you get into that friends with benefits range, right? That's where you start to feel like if it's on a consistent basis, you're getting good dick and you're getting guidance. If all you're getting is good dick, keep talking to and fucking with other guys. Keep doing that, right? If you're getting good dick and guidance and you see a possibility and standards set about how to move forward, then if you're satisfied fucking with him, don't sabotage that by going to go fuck with other people. I'm just keeping it a buck with you. Some people are not going to tell you that. You know, it's not about your body count, but it's about, are you putting yourself in a situation that's going to help where you're at grow? Pleasure denial is a thing. Edging is a thing. It's about seeing the consistency in this man. Now, once you're friends with benefits and you get to a certain place where you think about being more, then eventually he may transition into being exclusive with you as well. Now, there's a difference between a man being exclusive with you because you meet his needs versus a man being exclusive with you because he lost all his other bitches. So that's more of a game issue on his side. And I've been there before. That's something that can prematurely integrate a relationship. That's something that can cause a man to go through sexual disintegration. And, you know, that's something that can happen. But when you're in that position and you're moving forward from there, when you get to the place where you're thinking about dating, you have to spend some time being exclusive with this individual for a period. Now, you might stop fucking with other people before he does. But if he gets to the point where he's cool, he says, you know what, I'm thinking about dating you seriously, you know, y'all start going on dates, right? So you're friends with benefits and then you start dating somewhat. You're not exclusive yet, but you're just dating, right? And as you're going on these dates, you're spending some time together, right? You're getting to know each other. If you feel like that is something to where both of you think that this is something that could possibly be more, after you spend that time dating with the individual, then you become exclusive. And during that time of being exclusive, that's where you see if you can maintain your sexual polarity, if you can maintain attraction, if you can maintain consistency, if you can have sustainable attraction, sustainable respect and desire that consists and persists throughout the time of dealing with one another, right? And if things improve, and if dealing with each other exclusively is better to that man than dealing with multiple women, then you're in a position where after you've done that for a period of time, then you move on to the girlfriend-boyfriend relationship type of thing. Now, something to understand about this is something that's very calculated. But as a woman, you just have to be cognizant of your emotions, cognizant of your mindset, and move forward from there. Now, what I'll say is this, like for a woman who doesn't have a lot of experience, and for men who don't have a lot of experience, I do believe that the separation of sex and emotions is a learned behavior. It is not natural to separate sex from emotions. It's not. But it's also not wise to assume that those two things always take place at the same time. Right? Naturally, if no one's told you not to, if you're sleeping with an individual, you're not going to instill certain boundaries in place that keep you from becoming emotionally close to one another. You know, if you're tired after sex, you might go to sleep together, right? If the sex was good, you might be sitting there pillow talking with one another. You might start being in that emotional, vulnerable state of being opened up due to the emotion of that experience, to where you start divulging certain information about yourself and sharing that emotional intimacy and that vulnerability, to where you start to build a bond. You might take showers together, right? It might be a late night link up, but then after that late night link up, you might go out to eat together somewhere like Waffle House or something like that. You know what I mean? You might go to Waffle House, might go to IHOP, somewhere late night, not that too big of a deal. But as you're going through those processes and you're going through those steps, that's where a lot of that emotional investment gets built. Now, you have to learn to not do those things in order to not get invested to someone who is only ever going to be sex. Now, I will say this, just because you're not going to end up in a relationship with someone doesn't mean that it's never going to be anything but sex. There are liminal spaces. And oftentimes people they seek to avoid the liminal spaces in order to avoid feeling like they're being manipulated or taken advantage of. But sometimes these liminal spaces are good. Sometimes there are things that you're learning from an individual when you're in these particular types of relationships, and things that you're learning about yourself that will help you to find someone who you can be more compatible with leading into the future. Sometimes what puts you in a position where you're actually able to find someone who you can have sexual polarity with and get married to is being in a fuck buddy or friends with benefits relationship with someone who gives you the opportunity to reinterpret, to re-experience certain things that used to be hurtful to you in the past in a way to where you separate the stimuli from the emotion, right? Where you get to separate the stimuli from the emotion and from the emotional reaction and from the interpretation. So even if you don't end up with someone, that doesn't mean that you aren't wasting your time. See, that's where intrinsic value, intrinsic reward, intrinsic motivation are things that are so important. But you have to be secure enough in yourself in order to go through this process in the first place. Most men who are masculine and dominant aren't going to lead with the idea of trying to date a woman who he hasn't vetted to know if that's the type of woman that he wants to be with on a long-term basis. He's actually protecting you by giving you the opportunity to display that that's the type of relationship that you want to have. Because a man who is used to having his way with women sexually isn't going to be trying to overly emotionally stimulate a woman to the point where she expects it's going to be more and she's going to be hurt if it isn't. You got to understand that. A lot of the times what women desire from men is something, it's a certain level of safety, it's a certain level of emotions, a certain level of intimacy, that if she doesn't get what she thinks she's supposed to get out of it, now she's going to feel hurt, now she's going to feel manipulated, now she's going to feel taken advantage of. But things don't often have to be that way. You can have an enjoyable fling with somebody. You can have an enjoyable sector of your life that may have been 6 months, that may have been a year, right? That may have been, 3 months, where you learn so much more about yourself, that you learn more about yourself in that than relationships that lasted for multiple years. But my point is that the separation of sex and emotions is something that is learned behavior. But after you learn that behavior, you have to relearn what it means to sexually integrate. My blurred pill sexual integration approach is not about trying to take people who are already of following that path consistently of the traditional dating model and saying, okay, if it's working for you, cool, it's working for you, right? If it's working for you, it's working for you. If you get lucky enough to traditionally date and to go through that process, and then you're lucky enough to find a man who you respect and you desire, although he's being transactional and some type of indirect way about sex, you are able to respect and desire that man, you feel sexually satisfied, he has good leadership skills, then listen, you're good. I'm not talking about you. I'm more so speaking to people who are within hookup culture, who see hookup culture as something that is so much different, see casual sex as something that is so different, so separate from doing things the quote unquote right way. I'm speaking to people who have this mindset of, well, I want a relationship, but within my desire to have companionship, to have a relationship, I want to make sure that we actually have some sexual polarity, and I want to make sure that we actually have some type of sexual chemistry and compatibility and have something that's sustainable, right? So I'm talking to people who are within hookup culture. I'm talking to people who are within the realm of casual sex, saying that you don't have to say this casual sex is wrong, this is bad, I want to do things the right way now. So then you jump completely out of that mindset, and then you go build an emotional connection with somebody where you may not even have sexual chemistry or sexual polarity. You may not even have a dynamic to where that can be sustainable, and you may be too overstimulated to deal with someone who is on that sexual caliber compared to what your past experiences were. And that's something that leads to duplicity. You know, I've dealt with multiple women who have been in that situation where we were having casual sex with one another and they were afraid of their emotions getting involved, right? And because they may have been afraid of their emotions getting involved, they liked me at first, right? They liked me. But when I may have told them, you know what? I don't jump into relationships. You know, we can sleep with each other for a while, see if we have some compatibility, see if we get to know each other. And then from that place, if we get along, then we can see where it goes from there. But I don't jump into situations, I don't do that. Sometimes a woman will take that as not right now, meaning never. And when a woman takes not right now as never to protect herself, then oftentimes a woman will jump into a relationship with a man who is a simp, or a man who's a trick, or a man who's feminine and emotional. And in most instances I've seen with women who did that, they ended up cheating on that next man. Especially me, I'm a sex coach. I'm a dom. Like, the way I do shit, I give women a level of pleasure. Most of them never thought they was going to experience that. They didn't know they could experience that. So to go from dealing with me to dealing with the beta male is not a good idea. It's not a good decision, because there's no guarantee that you will get that same level of pleasure. And then you're going to be taking a masculine stance towards a feminine dude because you're in a place where your cup is low. Then after your cup gets filled up, now you realize you're not attracted to him. You don't respect him as a man. And then when you get to that place where you desire domination again, then you're going to come back to Brody. And this is something I've seen multiple times. And oftentimes those women may come back with a better mindset, with a better disposition. They're like, you know what, you were right. But if they listened the first time, they could have gotten to a better place first. So it's just something to understand, is you don't want to go from being sexually overstimulated to pretending that you're a certain type of woman, to try to vilify your past experiences, and then to try to put a man in a position where he sees giving you a lot of emotional validation is the way to deal with you on a long-term basis, right? This is just something to understand. You have to know yourself. You have to know what your capacities are, and you have to know where your security is and whether or not you have the ability to do these things. And as a man, you got to have the emotional discipline to not try to take a woman to a place where you're not going to be able to lead her once she gets there. It's very important stuff to understand, very important. See, this is how sexual integration works. So what I say is, if you're in the realm of hookup culture and you're in the realm of casual sex, there are ways of being promoted from one position to another. One is when you avoid plausible deniability, you put yourself in a situation with someone who is willing to be honest with you, right? If a man finesses you out the draws, why don't you think that he would finesse you out the emotions without any idea or any desire to reciprocate that, right? If a woman is only fucking with you because she feels like because it's only sex, it'll only ever be sex, what makes you think that that situation will ever get any further? People have to take responsibility for the things that they want. If you want something, you have to make yourself attractive for that outcome. So really what I'm saying is, sexual integration, right? So separating sex from emotions is something that has to be learned and unlearned in this day and age. You have to learn that, and then you have to learn to unlearn it when you're in a situation where it benefits you to have both sex and emotions together. Because one without the other is never going to be a truly fulfilling relationship. Now, I believe that polarity is the foundation. Polarity is the foundation. Masculine, feminine, dominant, submissive. And then you integrate from there. But a relationship that doesn't have both a sexual dynamic together and an emotional dynamic together, where you have a connection on both levels, is not going to be one that's truly fulfilling. And what I really want people to do is to get out of this gentleman gigolo and Madonna whore complex and understand that you have to see a person as a full person. And oftentimes it's easier to integrate from a place to where you see the darkness in the individual first and you accept them for who they are. And after you see the darkness first and you accept them for who they are and you reinterpret those experiences, then once you start to experience the emotional aspect of things, as long as you don't have some really fucked up mental issues, once you start to experience the emotional intimacy of a relationship and you understand your sexual polarity, your dynamic in a way to where you can sustain that, then you got the excitement up front. You learn how to sustain the excitement. Watch my video on how to never get sexually complacent. And then from that place, when you get that emotional intimacy as well, is something that even intensifies the sex, right? That's a 9 level of sexual attraction. Once you get to that place, then instead of being emotion being something that's traded for sex and comfort being something that's traded for sex, comfort is something that takes that sexual desire and it takes it to an even higher level. It takes your chemistry to an even higher level. And that's something that creates that feeling of being quote unquote in love. And I believe that it's not masculine for a man to just be trying to fall in love with a woman. But a woman needs that experience. A woman needs that feeling of being able to fall for a man. And know that when she falls for that man, that he's going to be able to catch her. Right? And as a man, as you vet that woman, as you get to know that woman, as your dynamic improves and it grows, that's where you walk into love. You let that woman fall into love. You walk into it. You get what I'm saying? So what I just wanted to address is, I think Kazak has some of the best content when it comes to dating and relationships. I think that when it comes to understanding these different things, a lot of men, they're going to need a hard punch to the stomach with some of this information first, right? And I think a lot of men, they've experienced women who had emotions for them quickly. They experienced women who felt a certain way about them. So their mind is fixated on thinking that. But I'm telling you, men, if you spent your life only having sex with women who are already emotionally invested in you, then when you step out into hookup culture, you're going to reach a point where some of those women aren't going to, they're going to go ahead and shut down emotionally because you're upfront about your sexual intentions. You have to accept that. Don't just go looking for a woman who has emotional issues to where she's just going to cling on you because of the investment of her body. You want a woman who desires that dick, but that doesn't mean that an emotional connection and a relationship isn't something that can come out of it. Because if you see hookup culture as inherently wrong, right? If you see it as fundamentally wrong, then the fact that you had sex with a woman quickly without a date, without any promise of a relationship, you'll see her as low value. But the truth is this: if that's a woman who desires you and she respects you as a man, she's more high value than a woman who tries to keep expectations and standards on you. You have to have standards and expectations for yourself. You have to have character and integrity for yourself about how you do things as a man, and not put that onus on a woman. Because when you put that onus on a woman, you take away her ability to be feminine. You take away her ability to be emotional with you. You take away her ability to fall and allow you to catch her, because she wants you to fall to prove to her that you actually like her. Now, she's going to want that for her insecurities, for her emotional needs. But guess what? You're occupying too much space to give her space to be emotional. You're occupying too much space to give her space to be feminine with you. And once you understand that, you know that oftentimes this Madonna whore complex within society, this gentleman gigolo complex within society, this idea of boundaries at times, not all the way, but a lot of these ideas that revolve around this mindset of boundaries are things that limits people's ability to be able to have relationships where they have a strong sexual chemistry and attraction foundation, and then are able to go beyond there. Because if it's just sex, it's just sex. If it's just emotion, it's just emotion. No, you want both. But you have to know what order you're going to do it in. You have to make yourself attractive for the outcome that you desire, whatever that outcome is. You have to know how to lead through that process. You have to know that, like I said earlier, you got to know the difference between being emotionally detached and unavailable, right? Being overly emotional as a man, and having emotional discipline. If you never feel any pull towards that woman on an emotional level, to where you have to show discipline towards that emotion, then it's probably not a woman who you feeling like that. I'm keeping it a buck with you. Because as you spend time with a woman, you get to know her, eventually you're going to feel something for her. If you don't feel nothing for her, either you're just not attracted to her, you don't see her like that, you don't know how to lead her and coach her to a position where she can see you like that, or where you can see her like that, or you're in a position where maybe you have emotional issues, or you have a Madonna whore complex. You see her as a whore. But understand, just because a woman is a whore for you don't mean she ain't a whore, that she's a whore for everybody. And just because a woman was a good girl to you don't mean she wasn't somebody else's hoe. She got to be your hoe before she your housewife, right? She got to be your bitch before she your miss. Understand that. And that's not saying that to be disrespectful. It's just you have to understand that a woman desires a full spectrum of emotional experiences. A woman desires emotional variety. And I believe that it's better to lead with giving a woman an opportunity to re-experience and reinterpret scenarios and situations that she would view as conventionally disrespectful in her mind before she gets to a place, right, where you want her to be in a place where she wants to belong to you, where she wants to be yours, before she feels like she's already qualified to be yours, doing exactly what she did, because that's premature integration. Those darker experiences, those more dominant experiences that you want to give a woman, oftentimes a woman's not going to be comfortable with that because she feels like that Madonna version of herself that she presented to you is the reason why you're with her. But if a woman has showed you her darker side, a woman has showed you that hoe inside of her, a woman showed you that nasty bitch, she showed you those different aspects of who she is, she showed you her weaknesses and her emotional vulnerabilities, and you look at her and say she's still beautiful, right? But then you give her instructions on how to get to a place where you could desire to be with her, or you coach her up on how to be in that place without feeling like something's being taken away from her. That's when a woman gets to a position where she trusts you as a man. And if you know how to have a woman who trusts you as a man, right, without fumbling that bag, then you'll have a woman who's going to trust you and feel a certain way about you and have a certain fondness in her heart towards you for the rest of her life. It's Coach Brody, I'm out.